The stars belonged to the Vorthak, and they had owned them for 3,000 years. Captain Jinho stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the endless darkness of space. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease, while his crystalline skin caught the light from the ship's displays. At 12 feet tall, he was considered average for his species, but to most other life forms in the galaxy, he was a giant. The Vorthak had never met a species they could not crush. Their empire stretched across 40% of the galaxy, and every world they found either joined them willingly or was destroyed completely. There was no middle ground. There was no mercy. "Sir, we have found something interesting," said Officer Qin from his station. His electromagnetic abilities sent data directly to Jinho's mind, a form of communication that most other species could not even imagine. Jinho turned his massive head toward the younger Vorthak. "Show me." The main screen filled with images of a small solar system. 9 planets orbited a yellow star, and the third planet from the sun glowed blue and green. Clouds swirled around. Its surface and its single moon hung nearby like a pale guardian. "Life signs are strong on the third planet," Qin continued. "The species calls itself human, according to their radio signals. They have achieved basic space travel, but their technology is very primitive." Jinho studied the data with growing amusement. The humans had built small space stations around their planet, and had even managed to land on their moon several times. But their rockets were slow and clumsy, burning chemical fuel like children playing with fire. "How many of them are there?" Jinho asked. "Approximately 8 billion on the main planet, with small colonies on nearby worlds and space stations. They appear to be divided into many different groups and nations." This made Jinho laugh, a sound like grinding metal. "They fight among themselves? How pathetic." "Send the standard message." The Vorthak had perfected the art of first contact long ago. They would appear in overwhelming force, demonstrate their superior technology, and give the new species exactly one choice: serve or die. It had worked on every single world they had encountered. Within hours, Jinho's fleet had entered the human solar system. 50 massive ships, each one larger than anything the humans had ever built, moved through space like dark mountains. Their biomechanical hulls gleamed with an otherworldly light, and energy coursed through their organic systems. The humans noticed them immediately. Their primitive communication networks buzzed with panic and confusion. Jinho could sense their fear even from this distance, and it pleased him greatly. "Establish communication," he ordered. The Vorthak had learned hundreds of languages over the centuries. Their electromagnetic abilities allowed them to understand and speak any form of communication they encountered. Within minutes, they were broadcasting to Earth in every human language. "People of Earth," Jinho's voice boomed across every radio and television on the planet. "I am Captain Jinho of the Vorthak Empire. You now have the honor of meeting your new masters." He paused, letting the words sink in. On the main screen, he could see the human space stations scrambling to organize some kind of response. Their military ships, tiny things barely larger than Vorthak escape pods, were moving into defensive positions. "You have 72 hours to surrender completely," Jinho continued. "Submit to the Vorthak Empire, and you will serve us as a client species. Your world will become part of our great machine of conquest. Refuse, and we will reduce your planet to ash and dust." To demonstrate their power, Jinho gave a simple command. Energy beams lanced out from his ships, striking every human orbital defense platform with perfect accuracy. The electromagnetic pulses disabled the stations completely without destroying them, leaving them floating helplessly in space. "This is merely a taste of our capabilities," Jinho announced. "You cannot fight us, you cannot hide from us. You can only choose to live as our servants or die as our enemies." The communication ended, and Jinho settled back to wait. This was always his favorite part of conquest, watching a new species realize how powerless they truly were. "Sir," Officer Qin said quietly, "should we prepare the invasion fleet?" Jinho shook his head. "There will be no invasion. They will surrender within the day, just like all the others." But as the hours passed, something unexpected happened. Instead of messages of surrender, The humans began broadcasting defiant responses. Their leaders spoke of freedom and independence, words that meant nothing to the Vorthak. Some humans even suggested they would fight. "They cannot be serious," Kewin said, studying the human communications. "Our smallest ship could destroy their entire fleet." Jinho was beginning to feel annoyed. Usually, inferior species understood their situation immediately. The Vorthak had destroyed civilizations that were far more advanced than these humans. Why were they being so stubborn? Perhaps they need another demonstration, he decided. This time, Jinho targeted one of the human space stations directly. A focused electromagnetic blast reduced it to floating debris in seconds. The explosion was visible from Earth, a bright flash that reminded everyone watching of their helplessness. But instead of surrender, the human responses became even more defiant. Their military forces were mobilizing, and their leaders spoke of defending their world at any cost. "This is impossible," Kewin said. "No species has ever refused surrender after seeing our power." Jinho studied the data about human history that his computers had gathered from their networks. These creatures fought constantly among themselves, often over the smallest disagreements. They had weapons that could destroy their own planet several times over, yet they continued to make more. But surely they were not stupid enough to fight the Vorthak Empire. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories. The Vorthak had ended entire civilizations for much smaller acts of defiance. As the deadline approached, Jinho found himself facing something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen extinction over submission. "Prepare all weapons," he finally ordered. "If these humans want to die, we will grant their wish." The 72 hours ended with silence from Earth. No message of surrender, no plea for mercy, just quiet determination that confused and angered the Vorthak captain. "Sir," Kewin reported, "the humans are powering up their weapon systems." Jinho could not believe what he was hearing. "All of them?" "Yes, sir. Every human military vessel in the system is preparing to attack us." For the first time in his long military career, Captain Jinho felt something he had never expected to feel when facing an inferior species. He felt surprise. Dr. Sora Kang was having her morning coffee when the universe changed forever. She sat in the observation deck of Luna Colony Research Station, watching Earth rise over the moon's horizon like it did every day. The blue marble hung in space, peaceful and beautiful, with white clouds swirling across its surface. It was a sight that never got old. Then the alarm started screaming. "Dr. Kang, you need to see this immediately," her assistant Yuna called from the main laboratory. The young woman's voice was shaking with excitement and fear. Sora rushed to the main console, spilling her coffee on the floor. The screen showed something impossible. 50 massive objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were moving toward Earth at incredible speed, their shapes unlike anything humans had ever built. "How big are they?" Sora asked, her hands flying over the controls. "The largest one is over 5 kilometers long," Yuna replied. "They're made of some kind of biomechanical material we've never seen before." "And Sora?" "They're sending signals." The communication came through every speaker in the station. A deep grinding voice spoke perfect English, then switched to Korean, Chinese, Arabic, and dozens of other languages. The message was simple and terrifying: surrender or die. Sora felt her blood turn cold as she listened to the alien captain's ultimatum. 72 hours to give up everything humanity had ever worked for, or face complete destruction. To prove their point, the aliens disabled every orbital defense platform around Earth with beams of energy that lit up space like lightning. "Get me Admiral Park," Sora ordered. "Right now." Admiral Minho Park commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from his flagship, the destroyer Defiance. He was a career military man who had spent his life preparing for threats from Earth's enemies, not from the stars. When Sora's call came through, he was staring at the alien fleet through his bridge windows, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Dr. Kang," he said when her face appeared on his screen, "I suppose you've seen our visitors." "I've been studying their energy signatures," Sora replied. "Minho, these things are more advanced than we imagined possible. The power readings from their smallest ship are off the charts." Minho nodded grimly. "I know, but that doesn't change what we have to do." "What do you mean?" "I mean we fight, There's no other choice. Sora stared at him in shock. Fight? Did you see what they did to our defense platforms? They destroyed them without breaking a sweat. They disabled them, Minho corrected. If they wanted to destroy them, they would have. That tells me something important about these aliens. They're used to enemies who surrender quickly. While Sora and Minho talked, Dr. Yuna Choi was making a discovery that would change everything. Yuna worked on experimental quantum drive systems in a laboratory deep inside the moon. She had been studying the alien energy signatures when she noticed something strange. The aliens used electromagnetic fields for almost everything: communication, weapons, propulsion, even what seemed to be direct mind-to-mind contact. But when Yuna tested the effects of these fields on human brain tissue, she found something unexpected. Human neural patterns were completely unaffected. That's impossible, she whispered to herself, running the test again. Every other species they had samples from showed immediate disruption when exposed to electromagnetic fields of this type. But human brains just ignored them completely. She called Sora immediately. You need to come down here right now. I've found something incredible. By the time Sora reached Yuna's lab, word of the alien ultimatum had spread across Earth. Every news channel showed the massive ships hanging in space like dark clouds. World leaders were calling emergency meetings while millions of people stared up at the sky in fear and wonder. Look at this, Yuna said, showing Sora the test results. These aliens can probably read the minds of most species, maybe even control them. But not us. Human consciousness operates on quantum frequencies that their electromagnetic abilities can't touch. Sora felt her heart racing. Are you certain? I've run the test 50 times. We're invisible to them, Sora. They can't read our thoughts or predict our actions the way they probably can with other species. Meanwhile, President Tai-Ho Kim was facing the hardest decision any human leader had ever confronted. The alien deadline was approaching and the choice seemed impossible. Submit to slavery or watch humanity die. The emergency session of the United Earth government was chaos. Some representatives wanted to surrender immediately, arguing that life as slaves was better than no life at all. Others demanded resistance, saying that freedom was worth any price. They've conquered half the galaxy, argued Representative Johnson from North America. How can we possibly fight them? Because we're human, replied Representative Nakamura from Asia. We don't surrender to bullies, no matter how big they are. President Kim listened to the debate for hours, but his mind was already made up. He had spoken with Admiral Park, Dr. Kang, and Dr. Choi. He knew about humanity's unique resistance to alien mental abilities. More importantly, he knew about human nature. We've made our decision, he announced to the world as the alien deadline approached. We will not surrender. We will not serve. We will fight for our freedom no matter the cost. The words sent shockwaves across Earth and beyond. On the alien flagship, Captain Jinho could not believe what he was hearing. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen death over submission. They must not understand, Officer Kuan said. Perhaps we should destroy one of their cities to show them we are serious. But Jinho was beginning to realize that these humans understood perfectly. They simply didn't care about the odds against them. When the 72-hour deadline expired, humanity's answer came not in words, but in action. Every human warship in the solar system turned toward the alien fleet and opened fire. The human weapons were pathetic compared to Vorthak technology. Missiles and energy beams that could barely scratch the aliens' shields. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they were fighting at all. Commander Woo-Sung Lee led the first attack wave in his destroyer Indomitable. His ship was tiny compared to the alien vessels, but he flew it straight at the enemy flagship without hesitation. All ships, this is Commander Lee, he announced on the open channel. Remember, we're not here to win today. We're here to show these things that humans don't surrender. His missiles struck the alien ship's shields and exploded harmlessly. But the psychological effect on the Vorthak was enormous. They had never seen such suicidal bravery from an inferior species. Sir, Kuan reported in shock. The humans are continuing their attack even though their weapons are useless. Jinho watched the small human ships dart around his fleet like angry insects. They were accomplishing nothing militarily, but something was wrong. The Vorthak had faced desperate last stands before, but this felt different. Why won't they surrender? He asked aloud. He would spend the rest of his life trying to answer that question. though he would not live very long to think about it. The war that followed broke every rule the Vorthak had learned about conquest. Commander Wusong Lee watched his weapons fire uselessly against the alien shields for the third time that day. His destroyer Indomitable had been built to fight other human ships, not crystalline monsters from deep space. But he kept fighting anyway because that's what humans did. "Sir, we're down to 30% ammunition," reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Hyeji Park. "Then we'll ram them when we run out," Wusong replied calmly. This was exactly the kind of response that confused the Vorthak. Captain Jinho had spent weeks trying to understand human tactics, but they made no sense. The humans fought like they had already accepted death, which made them dangerous in ways the Vorthak had never encountered. Most species, when faced with superior firepower, tried to negotiate or retreat. Humans did neither. They attacked constantly, using their ships like guided missiles when their weapons failed. They hid in asteroid fields and launched surprise attacks. They sent false surrender signals, then exploded their ships when Vorthak vessels came close. "This is not warfare," Officer Kewen complained after another human suicide attack damaged their hull. "This is madness," but the madness was working. Not militarily. The humans were still losing every major battle. But psychologically, they were winning something far more important. They were proving that the mighty Vorthak could be hurt. Dr. Hana Bay worked 18 hours a day in her hidden laboratory in the asteroid belt. The facility had been built inside a large asteroid, invisible to Vorthak sensors. Here she studied captured alien technology and looked for weaknesses. Their electromagnetic abilities follow predictable patterns, she explained to her team during their daily briefing. "They're incredibly powerful, but they're also rigid. They can't adapt to chaos the way we can." This discovery led to humanity's first real strategic breakthrough. Dr. Bay developed something she called chaos protocols, random patterns of movement and communication that confused Vorthak sensors. Human ships began moving in ways that seemed insane, but actually followed complex mathematical sequences that the aliens couldn't predict. Captain Nari Song was the first to test these new tactics in combat. Her cruiser Dancing Flame used chaos protocols to survive a battle that should have destroyed her completely. The Vorthak ships couldn't track her movements or predict her attacks. "It's like fighting smoke," Jinho complained to his fleet commanders. "We destroy 10 of their ships and 20 more appear from nowhere." The Vorthak escalated their response. If humans wanted to fight, they would learn what real war looked like. Jinho's fleet began targeting civilian populations on Earth and human colonies throughout the solar system. The destruction was terrible. New York, Tokyo, London. Entire cities vanished in balls of alien fire. Millions of humans died in the first week of bombardment. The Vorthak expected immediate surrender. Instead, the human response became more vicious. Colonel Yunbi Shin had lost her family when the aliens destroyed Seoul. She led a special forces unit that specialized in boarding actions against Vorthak ships. Her soldiers wore powered armor and carried weapons designed to work in the electromagnetic chaos of alien vessels. "Remember," she told her troops before their first boarding mission, "these things killed our families. Show them what that means." The Vorthak had never faced enemies inside their own ships before. Their vessels were designed to be impregnable fortresses, not to defend against internal threats. Yunbi's soldiers moved through the organic corridors like ghosts, destroying vital systems and killing Vorthak crew members with ruthless efficiency. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Jaewon Kim was a communications officer on a research vessel when his ship was captured by the Vorthak. He spent 3 weeks as a prisoner watching his captors and learning their routines. What he discovered changed everything. "They can't read our minds," he reported when human forces rescued him. "All this time we thought they were telepathic, but they're not. They use electromagnetic fields to communicate with each other, and they assumed every species does the same thing." Dr. Yuna Choi had been right about human neural resistance, but the implications were even bigger than she had realized. The Vorthak literally could not understand how humans thought. They had spent 3,000 years conquering species whose minds worked like theirs. Humans were the first truly alien intelligence they had ever encountered. This realization led to the development of quantum-entangled communication networks. Dr. Suman Park's neuroscience team found ways to connect human minds across vast distances without using any technology the Vorthak could detect. Suddenly, Human forces across the solar system began moving with perfect coordination. They attacked in waves that seemed random but were actually precisely timed. They shared information instantly across millions of kilometers. They anticipated Vorthak movements before the aliens made them. The first major human victory came during the Battle of Titan. Commander Hyunwoo Yang led what appeared to be a desperate last stand against a Vorthak battle group. But his forces were actually executing a complex plan involving dozens of ships and thousands of soldiers. All units, execute Protocol 7, Yang announced, and every human ship in the area moved as one organism. The Vorthak found themselves surrounded by enemies who seemed to read their thoughts. Human ships appeared behind them at exactly the right moments. Boarding parties struck their most vulnerable systems simultaneously. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Vorthak fleet retreated from battle. "This is impossible," Jinho raged as he watched the tactical reports. "They're using technology we've never seen before." But it wasn't technology. It was evolution. Humans had developed quantum consciousness over millions of years of survival on a dangerous planet. They could think in ways that electromagnetic beings like the Vorthak simply could not comprehend. The war began to turn. Human victories were still rare, but they were no longer impossible. More importantly, other species in the Vorthak Empire began to take notice. The first rebellion started on a mining world called Kepler 442b. The local population had been enslaved by the Vorthak for centuries, but they had never seen their masters defeated before. When news of human victories reached them, they rose up with improvised weapons and desperate courage. "If humans can hurt the Vorthak, so can we," declared their leader, a native named Zathal. Similar uprisings began on dozens of worlds. The Vorthak Empire, which had been stable for 3 millennia, suddenly faced rebellions everywhere. Their military forces were stretched thin, trying to maintain control while also fighting the human war. Captain Nari Song received permission to take her ship behind enemy lines to support these rebellions. Her mission was supposed to be reconnaissance, but she ended up training alien rebels in human fighting techniques. "Forget about winning," she told a group of 6 armed crystalline beings on a factory world. "Think about making them pay for every victory. Think about making them afraid." The Vorthak were learning to be afraid. Captain Jinho had requested reinforcements 3 times, but the Empire was facing problems on multiple fronts. Worse, his own crew was beginning to show signs of something Vorthak had never experienced: doubt. "Sir," Officer Kewen said quietly after another failed attempt to predict human movements.
"What if we cannot win this war?"
The question hung in the air like poison. In 3,000 years of conquest, no Vorthak had ever asked such a thing. The humans had done more than resist. They had planted a seed of uncertainty in the minds of their enemies. And once that seed took root, it would grow into something that would destroy the Vorthak Empire completely. Everything changed on a cold Tuesday morning when Lieutenant Jae-won Kim made a discovery that would reshape the galaxy. He was leading a reconnaissance mission deep in Vorthak space, studying their military installations from a hidden observation post. His small team had been watching the alien base for weeks, learning their routines and looking for weaknesses. But what Jae-won found was something much more important than tactical intelligence. "Dr. Choi, you need to see this," he said over the quantum communication link to Earth. His voice was shaking with excitement. Dr. Yuna Choi was in her laboratory on Luna Colony, working on improvements to their quantum entanglement systems. She had been refining human neural network technology for months, trying to give their forces even better coordination abilities. "What is it, Lieutenant?" she asked. "I've been watching the Vorthak for weeks and I finally understand how their minds work. Their electromagnetic communication isn't just how they talk to each other, it's how they think. Their entire consciousness exists on electromagnetic frequencies." Yuna sat up straight. "What do you mean?" "I mean they can't think the way we do. When we make decisions, we use quantum processes in our brains that happen faster than light. But the Vorthak think using electromagnetic waves, which are limited by the speed of light. They literally cannot process information as fast as we can." The implications hit Yuna like a thunderbolt. She had been thinking about human quantum consciousness as a communication advantage, but it was much more than that. It was a thinking advantage. Human minds operated on a completely different level of reality than Vorthak minds. "How much faster?" she asked. Based on my observations, we can process complex decisions about 4 times faster than they can. And that's just the beginning. When humans work together using quantum entanglement, we create a collective intelligence that no electromagnetic being could match. Una called an emergency meeting with Dr. Hana Bay and Dr. Suman Park. The 3 scientists had been working separately on different aspects of the war effort, but now they realized their research was connected in ways they had never imagined. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Hana said as they reviewed J1's data. "We thought the Vorthak were superior because of their technology, but their technology is limited by the way their minds work." Suman nodded. "And our quantum consciousness isn't limited by anything we've discovered yet. We can think faster, coordinate better, and adapt more quickly than any electromagnetic species." They began working together to develop new applications for human quantum abilities. Within weeks, they had created systems that made their previous achievements look primitive. The first test came during what would later be called the Battle of Europa. Commander Hyunwoo Jang was leading a small fleet against a much larger Vorthak force. His ships were outnumbered 3-1, but they were equipped with the new quantum coordination systems. "All ships, activate quantum link," Jang ordered. In an instant, every human in the fleet became part of a single vast intelligence. They could feel each other's thoughts, share each other's knowledge, and coordinate their actions with perfect precision. The effect was like turning individual musicians into a symphony orchestra. The Vorthak ships moved with their usual electromagnetic coordination, which had seemed impossibly fast before. Now it looked slow and clumsy. The human fleet danced around them like water flowing around rocks, striking with perfect timing and retreating before the aliens could respond. "Sir, the humans are moving faster than our targeting systems can track," reported Officer Kewin from the Vorthak flagship. Captain Jinho watched in horror as his superior force was torn apart by enemies that seemed to exist in a different time stream. How are they doing this? He would never get an answer to that question, because his ship was destroyed by a coordinated strike from 12 human vessels that attacked from 12 different directions at exactly the same moment. News of the victory spread through human forces like wildfire. For the first time, they had not just survived a battle or won by sacrifice. They had completely dominated a superior Vorthak force without losing a single ship. Colonel Unbi Shin was leading boarding operations on a Vorthak space station when she received the quantum combat upgrade. Her soldiers were fighting through the station's corridors, when suddenly they could feel each other's presence like never before. "Can sense every enemy on this station," whispered Sergeant Minjun Lee. "I know exactly where they are and what they're thinking of doing." The boarding operation, that had been expected to take hours, was completed in minutes. The human soldiers moved through the station like a living weapon, striking the aliens before they could even raise their defenses. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Yuna Choi made her next discovery. She had been studying captured Vorthak neural tissue when she realized something terrifying: human quantum consciousness could actually disrupt electromagnetic thought processes. We're not just immune to their mental abilities. She reported to the military command. We can actively damage their minds. This led to the development of quantum disruption weapons. These devices didn't destroy Vorthak ships with explosions or energy beams. Instead, they attacked the electromagnetic patterns that formed Vorthak consciousness itself. The first test of a quantum disruption weapon was conducted by Captain Nari Song during a raid on a Vorthak supply convoy. Her ship, Dancing Flame, fired the new weapon at the largest enemy vessel. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The Vorthak crew began screaming in agony as their electromagnetic thought patterns were torn apart. Some of them lost the ability to think clearly. Others went completely insane. The ship drifted helplessly in space, its crew either dead or unable to function. "My God," whispered Song's weapons officer. "What have we created?" Word of the new weapon spread terror through the Vorthak Empire. For 3,000 years, they had been the ultimate predators of the galaxy. Now they faced an enemy that could attack their very souls. General Donghyun Kang was appointed to lead humanity's final offensive. He was a brilliant strategist who had studied every aspect of the war, and he understood what the quantum weapons meant. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," he told his staff. "We have the power to end the Vorthak threat completely." The Vorthak Empire began to collapse from within. Their client species, inspired by human victories, launched rebellions on hundreds of worlds. Vorthak fleets found themselves fighting enemies who used human tactics and sometimes even human weapons. More importantly, the Vorthak themselves began to lose confidence in their own superiority. They had built their entire civilization on the belief that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. The humans had proven that belief wrong. Captain Jinho's replacement, War Master Thekvar, received reports of defeats from across the Empire. Vorthak forces were retreating on multiple fronts, and some were even surrendering, rather than face human quantum weapons. How did this happen? He asked his advisors. How did a primitive species become more powerful than us? The answer was simple, though the Vorthak would never truly understand it. They had encountered something that had never existed in their galaxy before, a species whose consciousness operated on quantum principles. Humans thought differently, fought differently, and existed differently than anything the Vorthak had ever imagined. Dr. Jian Lim, working with the remnants of human industrial capacity, began mass-producing quantum weapons and coordination systems. Human forces across the galaxy suddenly found themselves equipped with technology that made them effectively superhuman. The war was no longer about survival. It had become about something much more final. The humans had tasted victory, and they discovered they liked it very much. The Vorthak Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, began its final countdown to extinction. The end of the Vorthak Empire came faster than anyone had imagined possible. General Donghyun Kang stood on the bridge of the human flagship Retribution, watching as his fleet prepared for the final assault. 3 years ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they commanded the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. "All fleets report ready, sir," announced Admiral Sora, who had come a long way from her days as a scientist on Luna Colony. "We have forces in position around 300 Vorthak worlds." Donghyun nodded slowly. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. They would strike every major Vorthak installation simultaneously, using their quantum coordination abilities to attack across the entire galaxy at the same moment. "Remember," he told his commanders over the quantum communication network, "this is not about conquest. This is about making sure the Vorthak can never threaten anyone again." The humans had learned something important about themselves during the war. They were not interested in building an empire like the Vorthak had. They wanted something simpler and more final. They wanted their enemies to stop existing. Dr. Jian Lim had spent months perfecting the quantum disruption weapons that would make this possible. Her latest creations could not only destroy Vorthak ships, but could permanently damage the electromagnetic patterns that formed Vorthak consciousness. Any Vorthak exposed to these weapons would lose their mental abilities forever. "It's not just a weapon," she explained to the military commanders. "It's a form of evolution. We're becoming something the Vorthak can't fight against." Captain Seokjin Nam commanded the assault force heading for the Vorthak homeworld. His fleet consisted of 50 ships equipped with the most advanced quantum technology humans had developed. Each vessel could phase through solid matter, manipulate gravity, and strike from dimensions the Vorthak couldn't even perceive. "Target acquired," his navigator reported as the massive Vorthak homeworld appeared on their screens. The planet was covered with crystalline cities that reached toward the sky like frozen lightning. Billions of Vorthak lived here, the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. "All ships, begin the final attack," Seokjin ordered. What followed was not a battle but an execution. Human ships materialized inside Vorthak defensive positions, striking before the aliens could react. Quantum weapons tore through their shields as if they didn't exist. Their mighty fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was destroyed in minutes. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on every Vorthak world. The aliens had built their empire using overwhelming force and advanced technology, but humans had transcended technology entirely. They fought using abilities that existed beyond the physical universe. War Master Thekvar made his last stand in the orbital fortress above the Vorthak homeworld. His massive station was equipped with the most powerful weapons in the Empire, capable of destroying entire planets. But when the human ships attacked, his weapons couldn't even target them. "Sir, the humans are moving through our shields," reported his tactical officer in panic. "They're inside the station, but our sensors show nothing." Thekvar understood what was happening. The humans had become something that existed partially outside normal space-time. They could attack from directions that didn't exist, Using weapons that violated every law of physics, the Vorthak understood. "Surrender," he ordered, though it hurt his pride to say the word. Maybe they will show mercy. But humans had learned a hard lesson during the war. Mercy was a luxury they could not afford. Every Vorthak that survived would remember the glory of their empire and might try to rebuild it someday. Lieutenant Jaewon Kim, now promoted to commander, led the boarding party that captured the Vorthak command center. The aliens offered no resistance. They had seen what human quantum weapons did to their species, and they were too terrified to fight. "Please," Tekvar begged as human soldiers surrounded him, "we surrender completely. We will never threaten your species again." Jaewon looked at the alien commander with cold eyes. "You should have thought of that before you tried to enslave us." The quantum disruption weapon activated, and Tekvar's electromagnetic consciousness simply stopped existing. His body remained alive, but the mind that had commanded fleets and conquered worlds was gone forever. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. Every Vorthak military installation was destroyed. Every government facility was reduced to rubble. Every center of Vorthak power was systematically eliminated, but the humans went further than simple military victory. They had learned how to use quantum technology to manipulate the electromagnetic fields that formed Vorthak thought processes. Any Vorthak that survived the war would find their mental abilities permanently damaged. Dr. Yuna Choi had mixed feelings about what her discoveries had made possible. "We've created something terrible," she told her colleagues. "We can destroy the very essence of what makes the Vorthak who they are." Professor Mina Yu, who had been documenting the war for historical records, understood the necessity of what they were doing. "They would have done the same to us," she replied. "The difference is that we're making sure this never happens again." The final phase of the war lasted only 6 months. When it was over, the Vorthak Empire had been completely erased. Their military was destroyed, their government eliminated, and their population scattered across the galaxy as refugees. Those who survived could barely function, their electromagnetic abilities disrupted beyond repair. The other species of the galaxy watched in amazement and fear as humanity accomplished what no one had thought possible. The Vorthak had seemed invincible, eternal rulers who would dominate the stars forever. Humans had reduced them to nothing in less than 4 years. Captain Nari Song led the last human operation of the war, hunting down the final Vorthak holdouts in the Outer Rim territories. These were small groups of survivors who had managed to escape the main attacks, hoping to hide until they could rebuild their strength. "No," Nari said simply when her officers suggested offering them a chance to surrender. "We finish this." The last Vorthak died alone in the darkness between stars, their escape ship destroyed by weapons they could not see or understand. The species that had once ruled 40% of the galaxy was now extinct as a military threat. 5 years after the end of the war, Admiral Sora stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship Never Again, addressing the Galactic Defense Coalition from Earth orbit. Representatives from hundreds of species had come to hear humanity's plans for the future. "We did not fight this war for conquest," she told the assembled aliens. "We fought it for survival. Now we fight to make sure no species ever has to go through what we went through." The galaxy had learned a new truth. There were predators who ruled through fear, prey who lived in terror, and then there were humans, the species that made predators extinct. The Vorthak had ruled for 3,000 years through overwhelming superiority. They had been wiped from existence in less than a decade by a species they had considered primitive animals. In the new galactic order, that lesson was carved into the memory of every intelligent species. Humanity had proven that evolution was still happening, and they had evolved into something that no traditional empire could fight against. The stars belonged to no one now, and humanity intended to keep it that way. In the archives of the destroyed Vorthak homeworld, one final message was found recorded by a dying alien scholar. "They thought themselves insects beneath our notice. We learned too late that we had awakened something far more dangerous than any predator. We had awakened humanity's capacity for righteous extinction." The galaxy remembered those words, and it never forgot.